Okay, so today I'm going to be doing a quick entry door install video. Going to show you the process I go through when I install these doors. I know there's different ways you can do it. I just want to show you the way I do it, which has served me well over the years. But the main purpose of this video is to show you guys the fastening requirements for the doors here in Florida, because the inspectors, they always want to see the installation instructions from the manufacturer, which is going to show, you know, the exact screw pattern that's supposed to be used. A copy of those instructions should be with every permitted job. So you guys do have access to those. They should be in the permit pack that you get when you go out on site. But you know, that's what the inspector is going to go by. So I'm going to be showing you guys what that looks like when you actually install the door. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do after you remove the base plate, which I know you guys all know how to do that, is you're going to have to install a sill pan. So this comes in 3 pieces. There's 2 end caps, which are going to go in the corners. And then there's a center piece that'll go in on top of that. But this piece here is always going to come bigger than the opening, so you're going to have to trim it to size. But what you want to make sure when you trim it, you got to make sure that this edge overlaps by at least 1 inch. Okay, so you want to basically cut it snug. Just don't cut it too short. So before you install these, you're going to have to put down some caulking first. So we're going to run a bead back here, across here, and then we're going to run a bead across this side here, which I'm going to show you real quick. So put a bead there, and I'm going to actually put 3 beads across here. Okay, just like that. So then you're going to take these end cap pieces, and there are lefts and rights. They're usually together. You got to pull them apart, but you're just going to set this side in, set this side in, and then what you got to do is you got to fasten it to the trimmer stud, which you can use roofing nails, or if you have a stapler, you can just go ahead and throw 2 staples in. And it's done. Okay. And these end caps will go right up against your siding. Now I've already got this piece pre-cut. What you also want to do is you want to put a bead of caulk on top of the end cap here before you put the centerpiece in. Now this has a bigger flange and a smaller flange, just like the end caps. The smaller flange is always going to go in the back, because you want the bigger flange to come over your plywood here. And then this piece, you're just going to set it in place, and that's it. You're good. So that's basically it. You don't need to put any nails in this section. So we're going to go ahead and get started with installing the door next. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with installing the door. The first thing I always do is put the deadbolt in the door. I also put the handle in, which you don't have to do, but I do it because I'm already putting this on. You might as well put the door handle on. The reason I put this deadbolt in is it's going to help me square up the door in the frame. I do not put any of the striker plates on yet, just the pieces in the door. So what I'm going to, and basically what you do is you just open up the door and let it sit like this. It'll actually hold itself in place so you can work on it. Pretty simple. After I get the deadbolt on, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to close the door, and then I'm going to go ahead and lock the deadbolt. And then I'll show you the next step after that. So I'm just going to close the door, close the deadbolt, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so the next thing I do is lay the door down. And by the way, this is something I would be doing inside of the shed. I don't have a shed to put this in at the moment, so I just basically made a frame that I'm installing the door in. But just so you guys know, I'd be doing this inside the shed. So you lay the door down, and then I would come over to the deadbolt. And as you can see, the deadbolt is not lined up in the actual opening of the jamb. So that's what I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and tap the door jamb a little bit to get that centered up, which I'll come over here. It's got to go this way a little bit, so I'm just going to tap it a little bit. And we're going to check it out. And it looks like it's pretty even. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come up to the top side here, and I'm just going to put a mark on the jamb, and I'm going to put a little mark on the door itself. As you can see, I got those marks. I'm going to use those when I stand the door up to make sure I got everything aligned. And by the way, I'm using a pencil, and these marks will rub right off, so you don't have to worry about an issue with the customer. Just don't go crazy when you're marking it. But I'll go ahead and remark this real quick. Okay, so there's my marks. All right, next step. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to nail on the side pieces of trim to the frame. You're going to need to have a brad nailer for this. You do not want to try to nail it on with your siding gun or anything else. You got to have a brad gun. And by the way, you can pick up a brad nailer at Harbor Freight for 20 bucks, very cheap. And we use brad nails here, so we can provide you with the nails. You just got to get the gun, but this will make your life easier. So, like I said, I'm going to nail it on. And what I did before I start nailing this on is measure over from the outside of the frame 3/8 of an inch. I put a mark at the bottom, I put a mark in the middle, and I put another mark at the top here. I also measure down from the top 3/8 and put a mark there. Same thing on that side, and then also got my 3/8 marks on that part. So I'm going to go ahead and nail this on, and then we're going to go ahead and put the door in the opening. So I'm going to line up my mark at the top as well as my 3/8 mark on the side. Then I'm going to come down to the middle, get on my mark. And the bottom. Now you're going to have to angle the nails in just a little bit. And I nail them on at 6 inches on center. So I'm going to go ahead and nail this other side on, and then I'll put the door up in there. Okay, so now I'm ready to go ahead and put the door in the frame opening. What I went ahead and did off camera is I caulked the vertical, both sides of the door opening. That way when I put the door up, the trim will seal up into there and help keep water out. The other thing I did is I got a center mark on my sill pan here in the opening. And I also got a center mark on my threshold here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those to make sure the door is lined up in the center of the opening. Because you always want to have the door centered in the opening. You don't want to have it slid to one side or the other. Because if you do it that way, you wind up with too big of a gap on one side, and the inspector could fail the inspection for that. So I'm going to go ahead and stand this up. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and check my marks here. Make sure I'm lined up, which right there I'm actually right on the mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my nail gun. I'm going to shoot one nail in through the trim, into the frame of the wall on the hinge side. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to where I have my two marks. If you remember, I put a mark on the door and the frame when I had it laying down to make sure that the deadbolt was aligned with the hole in the frame. Right now, the way it's sitting, the mark on the door is lower than the door on the frame. So basically I got to take the top of the door and kind of shift it over until the lines match up. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put a couple nails up here to hold it. So I'm just going to push it over. It's good right there. Shot two nails and good. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you that real quick so you can see those marks. First of all, I'll show you the marks on the bottom there. I got some caulking on my hand. And then right there you can see the marks on for the deadbolt. Okay, now that I got the deadbolt lined up, I'm going to go ahead and just shoot off the trim here all together. Okay, now essentially the door is basically almost done. I can go ahead and open the door now, and basically what we have to do now is we have to put the screws in all the way around the frame, put the striker plates on, and then it'll be done. So I'm going to show you that next. Okay, now I want to show you the screw pattern that you need to follow on these. So before starting the video, I went ahead and marked out and basically pre-drilled all of my screw holes. So very important here. You want to make sure, or you have to make sure, that your screws go in the thick part of the jamb. You cannot put them out here in the thin part of the jamb. And also I want to show you here, this is a used door. As you can see right here, somebody put a screw behind the weather stripping thinking, oh, that would be best because the screw would be hidden, but this would fail inspection on site. So you don't put screws in this thin part. You always got to go in the back side, the thick part of the jamb, okay? So the screw pattern is as follows. From the corner down 6 inches to your first screw. You don't want to be any closer than 6 inches. Same thing across the top, 6 inches to your first screw. And then on the top, you're going to do that 6 inches, and then you're going to come to the center. There's one in the center, and then one again, 6 inches off the corner. Same thing on this side, 6 inches down to your first screw. And then the rule of thumb as far as spacing from top to bottom is once you have your 6 inch screw here and your 6 inch screw from the bottom up, 6 inches, basically you equally space them all the way up. But if you just get your first screw in and then just go every 10 inches, you'll be covered either way. So you'll actually have probably one more screw than you need, which is good. Now on the threshold, you also have to put screws in there as well. Same scenario, 6 inches off the corner, one in the center, and then 6 inches off this corner. Now you want to make sure that the screws are on the back side of the threshold. You don't want to put them here because this is going to create a leak and your floor will rot. So, and plus the installation instructions show going back on the back side of the threshold. So make sure you put those in. A couple other things I'll show you here before I put these screws in. I have shims basically set up at every one of my screw locations, going all the way up across the top. Over in this section here, the frame is pretty tight, so I didn't need to put any shims there. And then on this side, I ran into a situation where, you know, this door frame that I made is kind of out of square. So I wound up with a bigger gap in between the door frame and the actual framing of the wall. So I actually had to cut a piece of 3/8 siding to set in there to close up that gap, because if you have too big of a gap, it could fail inspection. So whenever you install one of these doors, you should make sure, check with your shop and ask them to give you some scrap, which I know most shops are going to have plenty of scrap to give you, just in case you run into that scenario. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to go ahead and put all the screws in. I'm going to shave off all the shims. I'm going to cut them off flush. And then I'm also going to put in the 2 striker plates. I already have one in. So what I wanted to show you guys with this is, typically I'll put the striker plate for the door handle in first. And I pre-drill the hole. You always want to pre-drill your holes. It makes it so much easier. Once you have the 2 holes pre-drilled for this striker plate, you're going to measure from the frame back to the center of the hole that you drilled. And then you're going to do the same thing over here for this striker plate, because you want this striker plate and this striker plate for the deadbolt. You want those to be aligned. Otherwise, when you go to turn the deadbolt in, if it's not aligned with the lower one, it's not going to go, and you're going to sit there and fight with it, and you're going to drill a bunch of holes and make a mess. This frame, this door I'm using, has already been used, so it's already got a couple holes in it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in as well and pre-drill it so that it lines up with this one. And then when we close the door and we go to turn the deadbolt, it should line up real nice. So I'll be back in just a minute to show you the finished product. Okay, last part of the video. So what I wanted to show you guys, I put the top piece of trim on. So before I put it on, I went ahead and I put a bead of caulking on the wall itself, put the trim on, nailed it on, and then ran another bead of caulk across the top side of the trim. So make sure you guys do that, just to keep water out. And a couple things I want to show you here real quick. On these hinges, so from the factory, this door setup is going to come with a screw missing, one on each hinge. So this is a screw that you're going to have to put in the field. It's got to be at least 2 inches long. So basically we're just going to use our same hinge screws that we use on our Tuff Shed doors. Also, same screws that we use here are the hinge screws that we use on the door. So you're going to have one there. There's going to be one here, which I already put in, and another one at the bottom. So as you can see, I've got all the screws put in all the way around, coming down. And then same thing on your striker plates. You got to use the hinge screws on both of those. The inspector will be looking for that. And then one thing I want to show you is with the deadbolt. Now I don't have the key for this because this is a used door lock, used door. So I'll just go around the inside to show you real quick. So as you can see, it turns real easy, no bind whatsoever. So like I was saying before, the way that you can make that happen is when you put this first plate on, measure over to the center of your screws, and then do the same thing here. That way your 2 plates are perfectly aligned. Then when you go ahead and close the door, you shouldn't have any issue with the deadbolt. So that's pretty much it for this video. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys. If you have any questions on anything, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you. Take care.